These are the foundational items, and you need to be aware of it if you're franchising your business in 2025 or 2026. FDD, your franchise agreement, your go-to-market strategy, your operations manual, brand positioning, your sales process alignment, what franchise sales channels you're focused on, your legal infrastructure, and your long-term growth strategy. To make sure that legal infrastructure supports it. When I look at the franchise model itself, the FDD, the legal infrastructure, the website, there's nothing specific about the brand. It's very generic. On the legal end, your legal needs to support that brand promise. And that's why when we're going through the franchising process, our clients go through a brand story and brand promise workshop. We need to start demonstrating how we're going to help you succeed. When you franchise your business, that's not the goal. It's not becoming a franchisor. It's growing a franchise system that grows strategically, grows over time, builds enterprise value, and is legally compliant. And in this video, we're going to discuss the 7 legal and strategic foundational items that you need to keep in mind as you go through the franchising process, 2025 or 2026. I want you to keep these items on your radar because so many new franchisors get it wrong. They work with a developer, or they work with a team that's just checking the box on a bunch of items, and it turns into a lot of form over substance, and many times results in legal infrastructure issues that you won't know about for many years from now, whether it's sitting with private equity, sitting with investors, or running into legal compliance issues. So this isn't a step-by-step guide on how to franchise your business. That video, you could watch our 7 steps to franchising your business. Here, we're going to discuss our next level insights that you as a founder or part of the leadership team should be considering as you decide to franchise your business, how to know if you're doing it the right way, and to ensure you're building a system that could scale over time. So what are these 7 legal and strategic essentials we want to focus on? Well, it's the FDD itself and your franchise agreement and your legal infrastructure. It's your go-to-market strategy, which is how does your FDD pair up with your growth strategy, your positioning in the marketplace? Your operations manual, how are you approaching it both today and improving it in the future? Your brand positioning, you're not just here to sell franchises. What's your brand story? How does it integrate with your FDD? How does it integrate with the economic positioning of your franchise offering? Sales process alignment, how are you going to sell franchises? What are your franchise sales materials? And how to ensure you're staying compliant as you go forward. Other franchisee recruitment and sales channels, we want to see where we're going to be selling franchises and how that fits in with your legal infrastructure and your long-term growth strategy. All of these things need to come together in your legal blueprint, in your strategic foundation, which is your franchise disclosure document. And why are we so focused on this? Because I see too much form over substance and too many check the box items and issues coming down the line. So let's start your FDD and your franchise agreement. Of course, your FDD, your franchise disclosure document, that is the legally required disclosure that you need to offer and sell franchises, right? But it's more than just paperwork. It frustrates me so much. I'll read website copy or developer statements where they say we handle the legal documents, or we handle the franchise documents, or we prepare them and we have our lawyer review them. That's just a sign and signal that there's not integration on strategy and legal. These are not documents. When you franchise your business, 95% of what you're doing, it's a legal business model. Before you could offer and sell franchises, we need to develop, prepare, and issue a franchise disclosure document. It needs to be compliant at the federal level, needs to be compliant at the multi-state level, but also needs to be part of a conversation and learning process where we discuss the roadmap and the future of your entire franchise system, which is going to depend on your individual goals as a founder, the capital that you have available to start investing in franchising and franchise sales, what industry you're in. These are all variables that need to be evaluated as we discuss franchising and as we build the roadmap. Certain industries are going to have different pathways. Certain teams are going to have different growth strategies. And these are all things we discuss with our clients. So your FDD itself, your franchise agreement, that whole legal infrastructure, it's critical, it's strategic. And where do we see brands go wrong or new franchisors go wrong? There's a disconnect. A developer says, we recommend A, B, and C, or they use some cookie cutter forms that are not only not legally compliant, but they're not structured the right way. And we see this happen often. If you're a brick and mortar business, we see a FDD or legal infrastructure that doesn't account for a ton of variables associated with your business and your industry. If you're a mobile services business, many times we see an FDD that's built as if you're a fixed location retail business. These things silently harm growth and will impact you in a way, if you don't have the right legal infrastructure, that you won't realize. And then you're going to misdiagnose the cause. So we have clients come to us and say, Charles, we're just not growing. We're not gaining interest with franchise brokers, or we're having a difficult time selling franchises. And a lot of times the developers or team that they worked with will say, well, you need to spend more money on marketing or do certain other things. But what they don't realize, and they later discover, is there's been a structural weakness or a faulty foundation on their legal infrastructure. The FDD itself, it's not built the right way to answer the correct questions in the franchise sales process, or it's not structured the right way with territories, how item 19 is projecting information, and the entire underpinnings of what we're offering as a franchise. Also significantly, aside from franchise sales, many times the FDD and franchise agreement, it's so cookie cutter, it's creating legal exposure. It's not protecting you for different expansion opportunities. It's not protecting you by providing uniformity and consistency among franchisees as to territory structures, fee structures, and it's not built to grow with your franchise system. So that's FDD and franchise agreement. Legal and strategic foundation, very connected with what we just discussed, which is your go-to-market strategy. So here we see so many disconnects. What do I mean by go-to-market strategy? Again, we're not just franchising your business, we're preparing your FDD, your franchise offering, you're entering the marketplace. So then the next question becomes, or as we're developing the FDD, what is the franchise opportunity we're offering? What's the initial franchise fee we're charging? What are the royalty rates? How do we set up territory structures? What economic story is our item 19, our financial performance representations, telling us? And what is the economic positioning of our franchise brand, our franchise offering? We discuss this often in so many of our videos. We talk about opportunity profile. And when we're working with our clients, when we're planning out the franchise strategy, the FDD, one thing we're focused on and we discuss with our clients is, what is the estimated investment? What is the income potential? And is the opportunity one of supplemental income? Maybe it's a lower startup cost, a home-based business. Is it income replacement, where maybe we have higher costs with marketing and some other things, but a franchisee, a franchise buyer in time could replace their income? Or is it even legacy building with a multi-unit opportunity, restaurants, brick and mortar, high revenue generating business models? So go-to-market strategy, as we're developing the FDD, as we're developing the legal, part of the strategy that needs to connect with that is, what type of opportunity are we offering to franchisees? What are the promises we're making to them? What's the information we're providing them in item 19 about the economic story, the sales, the important KPIs, and how do all those items filter back in terms of your industry and in terms of how the franchisee is going to operate? So for example, when we map out your territories, what are the territory sizes that we're going to be developing? What are the unit economics of your business now? How will they translate to franchisees? Do we introduce a single territory option if you're a service business, and the ability to sell multiple territories to a franchisee? And if we do that, how do we protect both you and the franchisee? We don't want to sell 4 territories to someone, have them not perform. And that gets to other questions about how we introduce minimum royalties and other structural items. So go-to-market strategy, it's strategic. There's no disconnect between your legal and your go-to-market strategy, these need to be integrated. So much so that it's a critical part of the legal process. How we disclose information in your FDD and how we set up the whole infrastructure of your franchise agreement. Where new brands go wrong, there's a disconnect. The legal doesn't match the strategy, or the strategy and legal are both cookie cutter. So focus on the go-to-market strategy. Operations manual. Here it's very critical. Operations manual, it's the how-to guide for your franchisees. It's not disclosed publicly, but too many new franchisors and developers treat it as some check the box item. Do you have an operations manual? Maybe their team works on it, and 3 or 4 months from now, you just get a pile of documents. You need to look at it as more strategic, as a tool that you're going to use to teach and train franchisees. But here's a key insight. The version of your operations manual today is going to be very different in the future. You need to consistently improve and update your operations manual. As you onboard franchisees, as you encounter pain points or common questions, you're going to focus on creating additional guides, a pre-opening guide, a pre-marketing guide, a learning management system where you could directly communicate with them. So the takeaway here, the point is that having someone else prepare your operations manual, and we help our clients all the time, is not a set and forget endeavor. And don't expect too much, right? Plan for this document to live and grow in different mediums, learning management systems, mini guides for franchisees, and training. So the mistake we see, new franchisors believe they paid all this money for an operations manual and it's done. And many times they're not using it. Many times they've spent a good amount of money on it, but it's generic. So we want to be cost effective and smart when it comes to operations manuals, understand it needs to evolve and improve. And of course, we have different levels of support, whether it's, a less expensive, more templated guide for you to build it out, to full done for you operations manuals. But I want you to understand that this needs to evolve over time and needs to become a learning platform and a communication platform for your franchise buyers. So next strategic item that we need to get right is brand positioning. My biggest pet peeve and the thing that frustrates me so much when I see new franchisors, they're like, Charles, they'll reach out. We're stuck, not clients of ours. We spent all this money on the development process. We're not selling franchises. And we've spent money with PR agencies. We spent money on Facebook lead generation. We hired all these companies and we're getting leads, but they're not good quality. We're not converting deals. And time and again, when I look at the franchise model itself, the FDD, the legal infrastructure, the website, there's nothing specific about the brand. It's very generic. And on the brand positioning standpoint, the franchise sales website, maybe it was reviewed by a developer or they recommended certain things. It's always generic, right? I'll see generic phrases like franchise with us or join $20 billion industry. And what they miss time and again is brand story, founder story, 3 uniques, franchisee transformation. On the legal end, your legal needs to support that brand promise. And that's why when we're going through the franchising process, our clients go through a brand story and brand promise workshop because number one, I want to educate and inform them. What are the things we're representing in the FDD? How do they reflect the opportunity you're offering? And then how does this all connect with your brand positioning and your marketing? So for example, what is the economic story your item 19 is telling? How do your territory structures support their growth opportunity? And what's the underpinnings of your royalty structures? And then at a deeper level, as a new franchisor, rather than doing what everyone else does or just check the box items where you're going to end up spending a ton of money and not be that brand that scales and succeeds, how can we start building up your process, your IQ, so you have your version 1.0 of your franchise sales website, talk about your brand story, how the business has transformed your life, the 3 uniques that you bring to the table for your franchisees. And usually they revolve around the economic potential, right? It revolves around the business itself and how it's going to transform their lives. Most importantly, rather than using generic terms like training and support, you need to start demonstrating how we're going to help you succeed. That's all about brand positioning. Either new brands, they don't focus on it at all, or there's a complete disconnect between the FDD and the brand promise. And that's a mistake we want to avoid. Which gets to the next strategic item, which is sales process alignment. As you become a new franchisor, it's a learning process, right? So we're a new franchisor, your FDD is issued. Our advice always, spend the next 12 months seasoning your franchise brand. What do I mean? Well, you're going to learn the franchise industry. I want to make smart decisions together. Let's focus on the organic reach of your brand, people that know you, social media, customers. What's their reaction to your franchise offering? What's their interest? And to build out on the ground a very custom process for how you're responding with them. Those in email campaigns, email responses, your CRM system, your franchise sales discovery guide and presentation, and how we close deals. We also want to make sure that we do it in a legally compliant way. How do we disclose the FDD? Are we registered in franchise registration states? And do you have the legal team backing you to help you navigate this, right? We have our FranIQ compliance system. We prepare agreements for our clients. When the franchise buyer has an attorney, we're going to engage in a proactive communication to streamline the process and help close the deal, which hopefully is a good fit franchisee for you. So sales process alignment, that's critical. The next strategic item is, are we building your FDD in alignment with our franchise sales strategy, right? So we want strategic alignment for franchise sales and franchise sales channels. So what are some of the franchise sales channels where you get exposure to potential franchise buyers that may want to buy your franchise? Well, it's organic, right? Your website, your location, friends, family, customers, social media influence. That's organic reach, right? Then we have paid media, which can deal with pay-per-click ads, can deal with paid PR placements to tell story. The other most significant channel, depending on your industry, is franchise brokers and broker groups, right? Franchise brokers, they're independent third parties. They work with franchisors. They'll phrase their positioning as, we help franchise buyers learn about franchising and find a good fit for them. But for many industries, especially home service-based businesses, lower startup cost service businesses, but even restaurants and brick and mortar, franchise brokers do play a significant role in the franchise sales process. These franchise brokers or franchise consultants, they're out there looking for leads. They're paying for leads. They're running ads on LinkedIn. They're communicating with people. They're trying to qualify franchise buyers and then fit them with a franchisor, maybe like you, in the future, and you're going to pay them a commission. So as we go through the process, we need to evaluate, based on your industry, what are the most viable sales channels? And I could give you an example. We have a client that's super successful today and very successful with franchise brokers and broker networks. But when he came to us, already had an FDD. It's a service business, had an FDD, and had that sort of quiet, that growth inhibitor that he didn't know about, which in this case was his FDD didn't match his industry and his opportunity profile. It was a service-based business, but the FDD was built around a brick and mortar model, didn't offer multi-territory opportunities, didn't have a scalable royalty structure that matched the economic opportunity he was offering, and didn't have an item 19 that told an economic story. We rebuilt that, and then made strategic decisions about joining certain broker groups, which we could recommend. And the brand's successful in scaling. And sure, we played a role, but it also has to do with the founder, who really embraced the strategy, also embraced the brand positioning, telling the brand story, and is now gaining traction and growing. And that's avoiding a growth gap, right? And that's critical. And the most important takeaways from this video, which is, these are some foundational items you need to put on your radar as you think about franchising your business. Which gets to the last item, franchisor infrastructure and long-term growth. Boy, I mean, you're going to put so much effort and energy into franchising your business. And over the next 3, 4, 5 years, hopefully you're going to grow. You're going to sell franchises. You're onboarding franchisees. you're building a network. And we see it all the time. We see successful franchisors 3, 4, 5 years into their journey. Maybe they didn't start with us, and they reach out and say, Charles, we're looking for new counsel. Things have gone well, but we feel like things weren't addressed properly. And what happens? We look under the hood and their franchise legal, their FDD doesn't align with how they grow, doesn't provide the right territory structures that to adhere to as they've been growing, doesn't have a legally protectable and properly prepared item 19 that could create some litigation exposure. And for those franchisors, and it happens often, we sort of have to backcast. We have to take where they are today with their system growth, whether it's 5, 10, 15, 40 franchisees, upgrade the FDD to the proper structure because they've hit a growth plateau, right? They're finding they're having a hard time growing beyond this point. And many times, ironically, or not ironically, but you wouldn't expect it, it's the legal structure holding them back. And then we have to redevelop the FDD. But from a positioning standpoint, what's the opportunity we're offering? How do we set up territory sizes? What's the item 19 data we're reporting? And how do we do this where we're legally protected, where we're reserving legal rights to you as a franchisor that's not going to prevent future activities like an acquisition of a competitor or creating corporate accounts or entering new markets or e-commerce distribution or third-party delivery services, all issues that come up, but were overlooked in a development process where, it became check the box process. So the point, there's a growth gap that so many franchisors can run into. When you franchise your business, this growth gap can hit right away. You gain no traction. Or you become a franchise, everyone congratulates you, but you're now at the early stage. Then you start spending money, investing in franchising. Maybe you're attending trade shows or conferences, joining broker groups, going to meetups, but you're not gaining traction. And the growth gap, usually the point where you need to reset, is on the foundational elements we're talking about today, on the legal, and also seasoning your franchise offering, which also gets to many of the points we're discussing. So they all revolve strategically around the FDD, your franchise agreement, your go-to-market strategy, your operations manual, at least how you approach it. Critically, your brand positioning, your sales process alignment, what franchise sales channels you're focused on, your legal infrastructure, and your long-term growth strategy, and to make sure that legal infrastructure supports it. These are the foundational items. These are strategic, and you need to be aware of it if you're franchising your business in 2025 or 2026. And of course, if that's a road you're going down, reach out to our team. We're always glad to have a conversation.